Hello, Wethersfield. Hello, Connecticut. Hello, America. And hello, the other countries involved, which is all of them, individually grouped and together. And hello, worse than that we're going to treat as a predicate acts delivery system method that new modern nations were going to blame other things other than themselves. And we're going to observe what and why everyone individually grouped and can't, and together can't accept the short words of our species with logic, simple and accurate. Because of, for example, we're going to examine how originally and still all identity of the ground locations were used remotely. And now this is observable because it is being and having been used remotely. Identity of the grounds locations are and have been used remotely in relationship to instances. All instances that go before courts, that come before the executive branch's members individually grouped together in relationship to the opinions / convictions, lies and delusions of the political branch too since founding. Evidence. See, they're making one thing they do as not alone, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, overt criminal enterprise grouped other than they have them grouped now. See, this is in relationship to, for example, witch trials and treatments of witch trials, which have remained modular to that identity, that method, that breaching method that uses all identity of the ground locations, that you, in a way that is complete possession of the human fact-sheeping nature of all instances. We shouldn't say, people debate what slavery is with passions and emotions dishonestly as forced representation of as a color or as a race, rather than and or counter to that, which is respecting it and or disrespecting only in arrays of that, entertain fake logic, which is evidence itself, but no one's being allowed to have free speech. Because where and how all identities of ground locations, identity of who's going to have to speak about positive or negative when instances happen. They already happened, remember. This method already sustained, not just what it sustained, what it was doing between Native Americans A through Z. It had already done between countries A through Z. It was just, it was / is just using the method that uses each individual of each identity of the ground, location, area, and state of the entire species identity of the grounds, the entire species identity of volumes, per nature science, identity of the ground location, per nature science not left out, where its science is about positive and negative as where and how there is 1/3/5. In other words, the sequence true is critically important as well, because there are people involved with the phones where if you call up, it is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. Wethersfield Police Chief and his family members and interbranch through time. They already created instances with people associated with them, interdepartments of colleges and universities, and on and off the campuses to make it look real. Which would they pretend to and get away with only they ask people questions a certain way. They're furthering a theater where on and off all locations that theater was already self-valued, and that was already being and having been exploited by what originally and still most furthers and exploits and recorded is keeping the overt criminal enterprises, keeping the private ones timed, needing to hide the same sequence shifts to hide illusions, not and identity thefts and frauds roles. When people come up to other people at each age of fact-cheating nature with passions and emotions, dishonest, no one really cares. And where they pretend to care, is we have to address simultaneously, we're all our victims. We have to address where the victim predators interbranch, individually grouped and together are having been kept exploited for uses of fake instances and real instances with the illusions tied to that, where they're leaving out things. They're leaving out all of that is actually tied to identity thefts and frauds and mistreatments at each age of fact-cheating nature's campuses, which have connections that are missed because they were never on the record, because they were here before our founding parents were born. That what was force sustained between colonists A through Z and Native Americans A through Z, as no country, as all multi-front, not just divide and conquer, while simultaneously unify and conquer. You can't. This method has. Once they have nations individually grouped and together, blaming on other cause things, others themselves, the real causes for negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, like predicate acts. Like I'm not a lawyer. We're going to use two as the lawyers are recorded and involved with the methods that are bound by a method, bound by a breaching method. See, this is the way computers work. But to understand how and be able to tell about computers work actually properly, you have to understand how instances work properly in real life. You have to understand how real life, ground, has an identity of conjunction /S to our fact-cheating nature, where and how it is an increasing identity of volume only, where and how value is nature /nature is value per its system. That system of positive, which is criminal, for example, criminal insidiousness is a criminal insidiousness like a wrongdoer. A criminal insidiousness nature is going to pretend things are positive and or value positive that is not positive. To exploit exceptions. Exception nature. Excuse me. Are you supposed to do that when you? So, the important thing, we have all these instantaneous, simultaneous means. See, people can't explain. See, each science they're all victims. Each branch of government, they're victims. Per a method that knew they would blame other things, others themselves, for where and how their identity, the ground locations, were differentially maintained, completely, criminally foreign influenced, and self-valuing it. And where it is self-valued, that is exploited further. And where and how they do. So we have methods that we have not been allowed to talk about. We're also the people with the prisons tied to the people that train the prisons and the campuses commonly. And the branches of government commonly. The interstates and worse than internations, we have shared policing of campuses. We have shared roles with the torture method. We have Connecticut courts are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Not only do they prevent people the right to remain to the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. They're also fabricating audio and video against people through time increasingly. They've also been making up fake medical conditions with people and having whole faked conversations with people when there weren't any conversations at all, and sequence shifting. For example, with uses of Hartford Hospital, with families associated with the Leahy family, and with Wethersfield Police as doctors who are further involved with predicate acts with child sex offenders and medical offenders, and recorded roles with uses of the types of crimes. It's because they have the types of counters, types of experts, where they have the identity of the ground locations already having been involved with remote uses of them. They're already been used. They're live progressions. They're involved intercities with predicate acts on CCSU, on Trinity College, because they were already the branch of the government as victim predators had to hide live progressions horizontally onto the campuses and onto locations. And onto locations right next to campuses. This is right next to all locations. There is what is manifest, where the big world, small world, bonded for the favor of anyone, no matter where they are. That system is converted. We are syntax nature, where we are function. This is before computers. This is the value of sequence true. For example, which if you say that binary is a location, an identity of the ground location, that comes with the sequence nature. That comes with the locations on the temporary positive or negative locations on the keyboard, made positive if you press down a button. But they don't talk about the sequence properly. Maybe they do in courses where they're teaching about how simultaneously they have different programs running simultaneously. One looping is checking for instances of a key or of a group of keys being typed for functions with computer. And see what is simple about that and what is complicated about that. Both those ways are being inverted, because what is simple, complicated, and at the same time increasingly value as correlation/discorrelation, as a simultaneous nature, as an identity of volume, greater than and more finite than correlation while being its value. That is present. So Facebook and behavior, words like behavior, for example, are manifest where and how the private and the interbranch and the overt criminal enterprises and killers and people associated with locations on the ground, body dumping spots through time, and juxtaposed with other natures of. So there's evidence racketeering on a major scale, originally and still. That's why they self-value our founding parents and our plan, their plan, forbid free speech. They'll say you're crazy if you don't know. And so they have experts on American history. They'll say, oh, how come James Madison didn't sign the Declaration of Independence then, if he's the founder of our country? This is a multiple choice world that is leveraged against each age of fact, cheaping nature sickly distinctly. This is an identity theft method in the suburbs, in the urban area, in the cities. And Hartford's are urban/suburban per syntax online and per. That's how it is most. It's not like New York City. Even though they have these cities throughout the world. This pathology of infrastructure of means to it as an identity of the ground location, reliant upon value nature systems on a mass scale. There's no, people say, we have to go try to, some gardening, do gardening. On a mass scale, people can't do gardening. And on mass scale, further and further, where we have to garden, there's not enough humus to be put back into the soil. And further and further, all that is prevented demonstration is simultaneously self-defended, for example. And positive and negative treatments are self-defended that can't afford in any science. Each of the sciences simultaneously. It's not just, they make types of rights. Oh, Native American rights. You can't bring up Native American rights separately from the breaching method that put sickly overtly, sickly distinctly, black American rights. And across the globe, not one person of identity of the ground locations, therefore legal identity especially, it is evident when they make opinions about what that was about, what it caused. While they're simultaneously making opinions, pretending passions and emotions about what is simultaneously value / value progression within NASDAQ. For example, the unities and capabilities of religions individually grouped together. Revealed or not, forgot, remembered or forgot. The point was so we could have a quality of fact, cheap in nature forced. But they're forcing us. We have judges through time of various natures of courts that have been speaking lies into the record with their voices, and preventing, and as roles with prosecutors and lawyers, and states, lawyers and systems tied to Washington, D.C., tied interstates. A whole bunch of people tied on off the Wethersfield, Connecticut State Judicial Branch offices, tied to Wethersfield Cove, tied to Wethersfield Country Club, the Cove. There's some boating association with it. I don't know them. They use my name. They use my family name. This is a method. They use everyone's name. They attach everyone and the people around them to fake words, and people say, "Oh, forget that." It's all right, but not if you want to be use science. Not if you want to speak about positive and negative, and you want to have mandated law followed and counter child abuses properly. That means countering the men and women involved with the interbranch and private simultaneously. It is recorded because of how there have been self-valued roles with exploitations of hierarchy that never had integrity. They're using the same methods of identity thefts and frauds right with the locations where George Washington had to counter-extort them, using the help of the French general, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Also proof of this is how they had to leave slavery entrenched in here, where he had to meet the French general in Wethersfield, Connecticut, between New York and Boston. They had to leave slavery sickly distinctly in the North, even though the counter came sickly distinctly from the North. A contained counter. And this is our obligations to allow this demonstrated. Also uses of it to allow them demonstrated, which were / are tight roles with each instance in each court each day, with each crime scene. This is about America as a crime scene in relationship to the predicate acts delivery system method, if you will, a breaching method. Now this is, for example, where and how and why people from off and other departments with self-value, criminally foreign influenced manipulations of the syntax nature of people with English departments, no matter where they are, because of the value of all that can be discerned in relationship to what is only, because it is only increasing volume, so it can be discerned. Where and how the predicate act of the law and the predicate of English, they are in demonstration of the identity the sciences share, and where identity is volume. It is the volume that is simultaneously relationship to positive and negative, relation to and as the value/value progression. This is where and how we are a quality of diffusion, automatically as temporary/lasting positive to an extent, while simultaneously this is because we're being shown by nature's identity, but more this being obfuscated, it's value obfuscated, that we are a value/value, but we are as this Trinity, as a phenomena of being inside of a Trinity, where one part of itself, its complete self, its identity of volume as value as nature/nature as value, because it's invisible but still discernible. That's how you can still observe it scientifically. Because it is distinctly sequence nature as itself, won't mix. Where it is value as nature/nature as value, where it is only filling. The value of sequence true won't mix. That came before the finite now. It won't mix, but one way. And it has an inseparable tie to our quality of fact-achieving nature. When people use Native American rights or black rights, simultaneously you're saying things about people who are on pigment. Now the only excuse for that proper is our real logistical impositions, our real metaphysical impositions, and our real identity impositions, and our real identity, the ground locations, impositions, and our real identity of value/value progression, impositions, and our real nature impositions. For example, it increasingly being made harder by the branches of government to demonstrate what is simple to demonstrate, with how they are criminally legalized, criminal insidiousness natures, how they have been self-valuing that. So it's not just, it's a whole bunch of natures of abuses of the kids. It's a whole bunch of natures of roles with off-campus, even with the phone companies through time are involved with the names that through time that I don't know, they sought me out for confessions. So when they have sense and sensibilities of people that already had careers in law enforcement, with the judicial branch, they already had roles with evidence treatments that were criminally foreign influenced. They already have roles with wire crime, uses of child programs like the Cub Scouts. They have the Cub Scouts, and they have the policing of Facebook pages, covering up live progressions per their roles in a method that kept them needing to do that through time. So these are also people with Rhode Island tied to the people associated with also the Department of Motor Vehicles through time, and then their neighbors, and their roles with people with conversations and investigators tied to the corners of the street of the principal child offender, and to people that work with Hartford Hospital and other hospitals in Hartford and other cities and medical locations that are involved with juxtaposed natures of predicate acts. These are increasingly since the World Trade Center attack, the same ones that are involved with the World Trade Center and with Washington families and with federal criminals from various natures of cases before they got caught. Also, some of them were co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in a 2006 district court case. Leading up to that and since, investigators on and off Fox Connecticut News associated with two Mendez police and with a Thaddeus Grabowski, who was one of the co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, also involved with sequence shifts on and off with the World Trade Center attack location, on and off the location next to it, and since with the investigations and vetting identities associated with Trinity College and the Hartford Hospital. Also fabricating fake audio and video transcripts into databases because they had remote uses of investigators and of all the campuses and connected. So they connect those things. They're making fake instances into databases. They're making fake instances where and how they have, the Sense and Sensibilities, use Jane Austen's phrase, of alumni and people like that involved with identity thefts and frauds. Where and how they have the interbranch simultaneously with the overt criminal enterprises, thinking how they have whatever, needs to be undercover with them. Needs to be close to with that. So they self-value, blame on other things. So then when someone needs to tell them how they're really predicate acts with maybe not grouped the way they have them, the experts on predicate acts. See, now by example, each of the sciences, when you use truths that are true always, when you use the identity of truth that is also itself truth as exceptions, this is for the order of judgment. Forbid. And this knew that would forbid it, would self-value how they kept and keep. So what is sustained with the youngest kids? Simultaneously, simultaneously first at the same time, we have to care about, because there's connections between it. Also, people, locations involved with elderly. There, especially probate courts. So there's a Delafair family involved. I don't know them. They made instances where they pretended other with judges. Also, and with these people with the Fianza family involved with body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, and with wire crimes with people with AT&T and SNET. Uses of investigators that use these wire places, that use knowledge of identity, ground locations. So they have collusion with what creates and keeps self-valued, criminally foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments, identity treatments, time treatments. And so we have to address what they are recorded actually doing as roles with a whole bunch of methods and motivations, nature, needs, interests, but as roles with a method too, clear as day, on the Wethersfield campuses. How they've been hiding from my voice and attaching me to fake words since I was a little kid, since I was in the same grammar school that is further involved with more then and now, confessed and recorded, with abuses of kids, sexual, simultaneously, medically, and these are interbranch families with kids. They have also the news media. They've been telling lies with the news media. And now they're also, it is recorded, we have to get this on the writing because they're pretending passions, emotion, because that was being used by worse. They're needing to get caught for their kids, uses of their kids, because there are other people involved. There are judges, and there are foreign families, and with the medical, private too. And that's already been involved with them, so they're already perfected, wire crime, mail crimes, anything so they can get people before their courts, so they can keep fabricating more audio and video, sequence shifting from inside the courts. Further, we're tied to proven post-dated documents from inside the Ninth Circuit Court, right next to the World Trade Center in Manhattan, right before the attack. The same ones from Connecticut, further involved with Hartford courts and New Britain courts, people with predicate acts on locations where there are other bad things happen. Then they found bodies there. These are the same courts and people and prison stewards and campuses that train them and on off campuses locations that were people involved with predicate acts for those locations that were of other natures of organized crime. Juxtaposed with their evidence racketeering, child abuses. These are people with the Department of Children and Families involved with remote uses of identities of the law. See how they say about title theft? Oh, they can just steal your thing like this. They're saying we're taking part and we're blaming on other things other than themselves. People going online doing some cheap trick to steal your house. They need all these treatments of house and home to keep that from logics, science. Because we have employed, breaching method employed, identity ground locations that are only capable of causing negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and that are simultaneously reliant upon only made available reliefs, natures of reliefs in collusion with that, natures of positive treatments in collusion with that, natures of cherries in collusion with that, incapable of defending all those their roles with that individually grouped together increasingly. Identity of negative value nature progression, the whole species is in. Because we are separated from this native syntax. We are forced to debate what is only offensively being used to keep from being discerned what is recorded clear as day. Criminally foreign influence uses of premises treatments, sequence treatments, finite active progressive treatments, identity treatments. Everywhere fact treatment nature have to be made. 10. Timeless.